Hello and welcome to Policy Awareness Week. Have you heard about Tennessee's new law? Well, tonight you're going to hear all about it. We have some exciting panelists who are all doctoral candidates, as well as moi, your co-moderator, as well as Terry Manning, who is the moderator for tonight's session. But before we begin, I'd like to give a special shout out to our professors, Dr. Nelson and Dr. Robinson, who inspired us to put this forum on. And I also want to give a special shout out to Attorney Michael Harris, who is the current chair of the Shelby County Democratic Party. And he's going to be behind the scenes with StreamYard. Okay, let's begin. Again, my name is Erica Sugarman. I am an educator with Shelby County Schools for the past 22 years. I am a grassroots activist, as well as sit on several boards. Also, you may remember me from 2019 when I ran for a citywide campaign for city council. I lost by 1%, and I want to thank everybody for that 22,800 votes. Okay, now moving along, we have with us tonight Crystal Watts Peterson. She is 14 years of experience as an educator. She currently serves as an elementary school principal for Memphis, Tennessee at Valentine Optional Elementary School. And before becoming a principal, Watts Peterson served as an English language arts teacher, special education teacher, instructional facilitator, and assistant principal. And she's also a doctoral candidate. And next, we have Jolie Molly Holly, and she is currently serves as the president of the Memphis Shelby County Education Association. Molly Holly has been an educator for more than 20 years. Prior to becoming president, she worked as a literacy instructional advisor for the Shelby County Schools District. As a literacy advisor, she was able to support K through second grade teachers with using the best instructional practices for teaching foundational skills and the other ELA standards. Molly Holly is also a doctoral candidate. Okay, Manny, do you want to introduce the other panelists?
Yes, good evening. I am Terry Manning, and I serve as the Federal Programs Manager for the Achievement School District. I've been there since 2008. I am responsible for overseeing compliance of ESL, homeless, foster care, and migrant federal programs. At this time, I would like to introduce the additional panelists, Alethea Henry. Alethea serves as the Chief of Instructional Support for the Achievement School District. She is responsible for managing a team that builds teacher capacity through high quality professional development and instructional coaching. Alethea Henry has 24 years of experience in urban education, serving high needs populations with a proven track record of success as a classroom teacher and an instructional support provider. Also, we have on the panel today is Lisa Settle. Lisa is the interim superintendent of the Achievement School District. She is responsible for leading the only statewide school district that is comprised of schools in the bottom 5% in the state. She has served in higher education for over a decade. She has co-founded 2 schools, and she served in many roles, and she has served in many roles in the Achievement School District for nearly a decade. So she brings a wealth of knowledge to improving education for students in the Achievement School District.
Yes, and unfortunately tonight, the Shelby County Commissioner, Althea Green, is not able to make it. She's had surgery, so we're going to send up some prayers for her. And I would like to preface the forum by stating that Black and Brown students are pushed out of school and into the pipeline. Students who are not successful in school tend to drop out which contributes to the prison pipeline. If students cannot read by the third grade, and if they do not feel successful in school, this also contributes to the dropout rate. And this increases the prison population rates of minority and marginalized people. Okay, Ms. Manning's going to enlighten everybody about the two laws that were just passed. Manning?
Yes. So on October 22nd, 2021, during this COVID-19 pandemic, there were two laws passed. One is the Tennessee Learning Loss Act, which addresses the learning loss of students due to the COVID-19 related school closure. This act requires that school districts starting this summer offer in-person learning loss, remediation and programs such as summer learning camps. It also requires districts to measure student progress and report those results. But more importantly, starting 2022-23 school year, any third grade student scoring at approaching or below grade level on the ELA TCAP assessment could possibly be retained. And that is what our panel discussion is about tonight, is how these laws will impact, how these literacy laws will impact student achievement and impact third grade promotion and retention. The second act that was passed in January is the Tennessee Literacy Success Act. And this act outlines new expectations for how schools and districts will measure and improve the literacy rates of our students. So before COVID-19, only 1/3 of our third graders were proficient in ELA. And so this new act, this new law requires that every district develops a foundational literacy plan that includes a phonics-based literacy program to teach reading, also foundational skills training for teachers. What's also included in this act is educational prep programs having more requirements around foundational skill training. And so that may require teachers or potential teachers in educator prep programs to pass an assessment to become certified under this new act. So with that, we are going to now transition to our questions for the panelists. Question number one, and you guys can, we'll start with Lisa. Question number one. Tell us what you do. Tell us what you do and how your role impacts students and teachers.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa Settle. I serve as the interim superintendent of the Achievement School District. Our district is an incredibly unique district in that we are a statewide district, and we are what's called a portfolio district, which means we have different types of schools. We have schools we directly operate. There are 27 schools in the district. We directly operate 4 of those schools. We have 21 schools in Memphis, and some of those are charter schools, some of those are contract schools, and we have 2 schools in Nashville. So we are truly a statewide, well, now we are West Tennessee and Middle Tennessee. Soon we will be West, Middle, and East. But my work directly impacts students and teachers because I lead all of the CMOs, all of the directly operated schools, and our work, my team's work, is to do all we can to get the funding, to get the resources, to get professional learning opportunities, anything and everything we can do and anything and everything we can get to get in the hands of teachers so that they can be better, they can learn more, they understand more, and then get that learning and tier 1 instruction, great tier 1 instruction to students so that they can learn. And then for those students who need additional help, my team, my department, my role is to make sure we go out and find those things and find those opportunities to provide support to our students across the state.
Yep. Thank you.
Sure.
Alethea Henry, how does your role impact students and teachers?
Good evening, everyone. I am the Chief of Instructional Support, and you're probably wondering what is that. And basically, my role is to support instruction throughout the district, and we do that in a variety of ways, whether that's through district-wide professional development, whether that's through coaching content leads. We have, as Lisa said, a variety of different types of schools, and sometimes we have a direct connection through the content lead to teachers. So we support the content leads to ensure that they are prepared to support teachers in the building on a daily basis. So we, like I said, we do that through coaching. We do it through district-wide professional development. We provide other supports. We do small group professional development. We just assess the needs of the school, and whatever way we can fit in, that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Crystal Watts Peterson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Crystal Watts Peterson. I serve as principal at Valentine Optional Elementary School in North Memphis, and my role impacts students. I run a school, so I coach teachers. I lead PLCs, collaborative planning. I ensure compliance with everything that we're going to be discussing tonight if this goes into action. And so I'm in a school building, so I'm on the ground with students and teachers.
Thank you. And Jolie Matty-Holly, is that how you say it? Am I saying it right? No, Matty.
That's good. Yes,
Okay.
that's good. Good evening. Yes, my name is Jolie Matty-Holly, so very close.
Okay.
And I am the current president of the Memphis Shelby County Education Association. So one thing that we do here is, of course, we advocate for the working conditions for teachers, for educators, which is very important, because when teachers are happy, they have happy students. They are able to instruct, with the right mind, with the right heart, and they're not worried about other issues. So one thing that we do try to advocate for is making sure that teachers, particularly like at the beginning of the year, mid-year, have the correct class sizes, that they're not overburdened with having too many students in the classroom, because we know smaller groups of students with a teacher supports instruction, better instructional practices. And one thing that I am proud to say, being president and with my literacy background, I have offered, since I've taken on this role, various PDs here at the association to help support teachers with their instructional practices so that they can be the best that they can be for our students.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jen. Am I echoing? Okay. So the next question is, what challenges do you foresee, if any, with the implementation of these new literacy laws, the Learning Loss Act, as well as the Literacy Act, Literacy Success Act? Do you guys foresee any challenges?
I can talk about one that I foresee with the Literacy Act. And so when you look at that act, it specifies that there's a foundational literacy skills plan that has to be completed for each child in grades K through 2. And I thought about, we already have the RTI process. And so in a lot of schools where you have students that aren't able to read on grade level, they're already being progress monitored through the RTI academics program. So they may have an academic plan already in reading or for math. But when we think about this particular plan, I thought about how teachers may perceive that. And so if they're in a school building where they deliver their own interventions, and then we have a foundational literacy skills plan that we're also adding to it, I wonder how those two things marry. And so will teachers see it as an additional piece of paperwork? Is it another piece of just compliance, trying to get it done? And how will that actually play with kids that already have an intervention plan in reading? And so that was one of the challenges that I foresaw. And I wonder how, we can communicate this to teachers in a way where they will embrace it and see it as something that they want to do for their students to ensure that they're able to grasp the foundational literacy skills before they get to 3rd grade.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Crystal. Anyone else?
That's at Crystal. Hi, Crystal. How are you? It's good to see you. Actually, along the same lines, that was something that I've thought about with my district. And one of the things we try to do is we try to minimize the number of things and number of things teachers have to do. So we can absolutely, we're looking for ways to merge the two so that it can fit for what we need for RTI squared and also fit for what we must do to be in compliance with the law. And I mean, with everything and anything with teachers, and as you know, as a school leader, we want to ensure that parents understand what the school's expectations are or what the expectations are with the standards, where their child is in relation to those standards. And again, trying to streamline as much as we can. So, I mean, I hope that's something that can happen for you all, but that is definitely something we're looking at. And to make sure that we are communicating in a language and in a way, not in a language, but communicating in a way with parents where they understand what we are trying to tell them so they know what it is we need for them to do with their children when they're at home. So I agree with you there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and move to the next question. In your opinion, what programs, strategies, or interventions would effectively increase the literacy rate of our students?
One thing that, when I think about this question, I remember when I first moved to Memphis, we had interventionists at each school for each grade level. And we did not have such a decline in reading skills at that time. So I think that is something that should be brought back into the schools. I know the superintendent last week said that he wants to increase the number of adults in the classroom so that the ratio of students is smaller. So either one teacher with 13 students, or perhaps 2 adults in the room, 1 assistant and 1 teacher with maybe, the 20 students. And that really works because then you're able to pull students into small groups, give them more individualized attention, and really see what their deficits are and instruct them to just that. Actually, sometimes that, I'm going to say this, let me back up, I'm sorry. Sometimes just having that one-on-one type of relationship with the student is all it takes. So giving the opportunity to just build those relationships, making students feel special, and letting them know that you have high expectations for them is really the key. So having a smaller class size or having an interventionist in place to work specifically with students who may be struggling only with reading is a great strategy to have in schools.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else?
I wanted to add on to her comment. I'm not sure what that noise is, but in my current district, just as she just articulated, we in our K-2 classrooms, we are getting what is called a highly specialized educational assistant. That this summer they'll go through training on foundational skills, and they will be ready to enter in the fall to provide that small group intervention that she just mentioned. One of the things we have to consider with children, like they have to feel vulnerable and they have to feel comfortable with you to let you know that they don't know something. And they're not going to do that in a large classroom environment. And so with that additional person in each K-2 classroom, like she said, they'll be able to get to them closer and they'll feel more vulnerable to let you know what they don't know. And the assistants will be able to monitor those deficit areas and provide them interventions in that area. I think that is the biggest piece. And then also the professional development, that they're getting that beforehand. So they're not coming in the fall and then getting the training. They'll be prepared on day one when they walk in. And I think that's a really good strategy.
And can I just add on to that as well? Speaking about the professional development, a lot of times in our district, with the culture and the climate, a lot of times teachers don't want to take professional development in the summer, which is why we have to, with something like this type of initiative, we have to speak to their hearts and get them to understand that we are all in this work together. So we need to change the culture here. We need to uplift teachers so that they can uplift students, and not just professional development for the teachers, as was stated. We want to have it for the assistants as well, who will be working with the students, because oftentimes they don't know the strategies. They're just given a small group of students and they don't really know what to do with them. It might be a scripted lesson, but if they're not really sure or comfortable themselves, it's for naught.
Yeah.
I
Great.
want to add. I would like to add. I think I am in total agreement with everything you all just said, but I would also want to add that I think that a lot of our elementary schools are not departmentalized. I think that that's a strategy that we need to look into implementing across just the city of Memphis and in the county of Shelby, personally, because I think now we're asking so much of teachers. It's very difficult to become an expert at all contents. So because of that, I think we need to think about departmentalizing as well in the earlier grades.
Thank you for that, Alethea. I think that's a really great point as well. So moving on to the next question, staying in line with supports and strategies. What do you think schools need from parents and community leaders to improve students' literacy? What can parents and community leaders do to contribute to that improving that rate?
I spoke a little bit about this a few moments ago. I think one of the biggest things is that schools have to communicate with parents in a way they can understand. And I think if we are clear as a district and clear as a school, clear as a teacher about this is where your child should be, this is where he or she is, this is what we are going to do at school to get him or her to that point, and this is what you can do at home. So I think for us as the educators to be clear and to give parents some bite-sized pieces and to give them some things that and some tools and strategies and things that they can implement at home would be helpful. I mean, parents want to help their children. They want their children to learn. They want their children to grow and succeed and have the ability to make the choice as to what they want to do in their life. And so we as educators have to provide that information to our parents for them to be able to help their children.
Yes, I would also say too, one of the things that, and I wrote a grant for this type of support from the community a while back, but one of the things that our kids particularly suffer from is lack of exposure. We don't really talk about how that limits their abilities to read because they have not seen. If I've never seen a beach, it means nothing when I'm trying to decode that word, right? However, if I've experienced it, then I have something to attach that learning to. I have an experience to attach that learning to. So we need to think about ways the community can support in terms of providing our kids with different experiences that will improve their literacy skills as well.
I would like to just add one more thing. When we think about the parents, what we need from parents, we have to also remember that most of our parents were students in this educational system as well. So they suffer from a lot of educational trauma because they may not have been successful themselves in school. How often do we see parents that may be illiterate themselves? Particularly when we used to do in-person registration. They needed so much assistance, right? With just filling out the applications. So they may not know how to read themselves, so they may not be able to assist their own children with that. So what we also could use from our community advocates and support organizations is training for parents. Don't shame them because it's not a shame. It's just something that happened within their educational years that there was a disconnect, and it's okay, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. So at the same time that we're trying to help students, we have to help those parents as well.
I love it. Thank you so much for that, Jolie. That's great. Next question. In your opinion, how will the new literacy laws impact district and schools practices regarding staffing? So thinking about in terms of teacher retention rates, teacher grade assignments, and even difficulty with hiring certified teachers now that you have these additional requirements around literacy.
Actually, I think this new law could have a significant impact in that space. Typically, we would see, or you would see, schools putting their best teachers in the tested grades in that 3, 4, 5 as we're thinking about elementary, but seeing them put teachers in those tested grades. And so as we're looking at this new law, it could affect staffing where, you know, school leaders and principals and everyone see that we need to have great teachers everywhere. So not just stacking, if you will, the best teachers in those tested grades, because everything matters. And I really like the components of the new law, because it does provide and require the foundational skills, and coupling that with Reading 360, which is coming as well, where, you know, teachers can receive that training and that professional learning and the Literacy Partnership Network, all of these different focus areas from the Department of Education around reading and preparing and making sure that the adults who are standing at the front of the room understand what needs to happen. So, I mean, I think I really like the components of the act, and because we all know if a student can't read, it really severely limits, if not cripples, what they're able to do outside of that. You have to read so much in math and so much in, you know, all the other subjects that we must get this reading right. And so I think it creates the opportunity to ensure that there are great teachers everywhere, all throughout the buildings, and that all those individuals have received the proper training they need so that they can go in the buildings and into those classrooms and teach children the way that they should be taught.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'll ask the next couple of questions. Okay, research shows that Black and Brown students in culturally responsive settings perform at higher academic levels. With ASD and SES serving a student population of over 90% of Black and Brown students, how can multicultural curriculum that connects students to the text and improve literacy?
So one thing we have to remember is that when districts in our state choose the curriculum that's going to be used, it has to be on the state approved list. So let's think about the state we're in. Is this particular state going to support having multicultural images and books? Thinking about the history of our students, for Black and Brown students, is that going to be incorporated into the approved list? No. Curriculums are in place. Public schools are in place actually to keep a certain amount of students, Black and Brown students, marginalized in society. So it is incumbent upon educators and districts to go outside of the box with supplemental curriculum so that our students can see themselves and understand their history and how important that is and they are, so that they can be successful. If they don't see themselves, if they don't see achievement with someone that looks like them, they're not going to care about reading. They're not going to have interest if they're constantly seeing animals, or if they're constantly seeing people that do not look like them, that do not look like anyone in their families. The interest level is going to be low.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else like to chime in?
I would, Erica. I also want to add that, 82% of teachers in our country are white women. And so when we think about a culturally relevant curriculum, even in the event that we could get that, we would still have to do some work with the mindset with the bulk of our teachers that are teaching children of color, because for them to be able to deliver a culturally relevant curriculum, they also have to just be culturally responsive themselves. They have to create a culturally responsive classroom learning environment where they're acknowledging their own biases, where they're placing value in the lives of their students. And that's something I'm not sure that, in the event that we got a culturally relevant curriculum, we still have to do some work with the mindset of our teachers, because we understand that the bulk of our teachers do not look like the students that they are actually serving.
Thank you so much. Very good.
May
Anybody
I,
else before we go on?
May I add just a little bit more?
Yes, Julie.
Okay, because as you said, we are all doctoral candidates, and this is what
Right.
my research is around, the culturally relevant preparation that teachers do have. So in their teacher ed programs, they're not being prepped appropriately to be culturally competent when they leave. They may take one multicultural class, it may be an elective, it may not be required, they may even have two, but a lot of that centers around their perceptions and their biases. And does it really get to the heart of what they need to overcome those biases? And that is something that we need to further explore. And we also have to think about the teachers who are already in practice if we did switch to those types of curriculum. How will we get them to change those mindsets and their biases? How will we stop that? What will be the intervention for those teachers?
I would say too that we would have to also, I think a lot of our schools, we do have people who look like us that are teaching our children. And I think because of that, though, we don't think about the need for DEI in those schools, right? Because if our schools are not really diverse, you know, we're serving a marginalized community where 90% of our kids are African American. I don't think that many of us see a need to include, you know, certain practices or even think those through because we think that we can relate. And I think that we have to look at discriminatory practices even within a school that is not diverse, right? And I think that that's an issue I think that is often overlooked, particularly in our schools when we do have a staff that looks like the students that they teach.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. Next question. Do you think expanding pre-K programs to include all children, regardless of their income? Because right now, I know that Shelby County School District, they only have a limited number of spots for low-income students. And so not all low-income students can get into pre-K programs. And so my question for the panelists is, will you support, or is there an initiative rather, to support universal pre-K so that not only all low-income students can get into a pre-K program, but also all students?
I think expanding pre-K to everyone who is eligible, who's 4 years old, is a great initiative, a great idea. And what we need to do, like you said, make it universal, because right now, the way the pre-K programs are set up, parents have to attend meetings. They have to be available to come to the school. They have to pick their children up by a certain time. And that sometimes is a hindrance when we think about the socioeconomic status of our parents. I, at one time, was one of those parents. And it was kind of a burden to have to take off from work when I was in an hourly wage job to go up to the school to attend those meetings. I was losing income. So if we make it universal without having all of those caveats tied to it, it will be very successful because our students definitely need that.
Thank you.
I think anytime we can get children in school to learn is a good thing. I think it's a great thing. And so I think as we look at, in your question, do you think expanding pre-K programs to include all children regardless of income? And I know you're thinking about those parents who don't meet that minimum threshold or that maximum threshold, which is not a lot, but they are still part of what is classified as the working poor. So they are not eligible to get their children into pre-K. And I think that anything we can do to get children learning as quickly as possible will always support improving or decreasing the amount of learning loss and increasing the number of students who are reading on grade level. I think it will always help in that space. And I mean, with everything as we're looking at it, it's a funding issue. It's a funding issue. Schools don't, I mean, if you don't have a grant, schools don't get money for pre-K. And pre-K is an expensive program to have. And so it's a funding issue, it's a money issue. But anytime we can get children in buildings, and I understand and I agree what you mean, it always agree with your question, and it always makes me really sad and upset when we have parents who want their children in the building and want them to be able to come to pre-K. And we look at a mother who is struggling and we have to say, you make too much money to get your child in this program. So, I mean, again, anything we can do to get children learning early and earlier will always be a benefit to that child, to that family, and to our community as a whole.
Thank you. Okay, next question. In response to COVID-19, how is your district addressing the learning loss of students?
Okay, I'm going to jump right in there on this one. So one of the things that we are charged with doing as a district, all districts are charged with, we're required to hold mini summer learning camps, mini camp, summer school, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. We're required to do that. And we are super excited to be able to do that in the ASD. Some of our schools are holding their own, but we as the district will operate summer school in 4 locations. And this is not a shameless plug. I am plugging. We are looking for teachers to come out and teach in our summer program. And we are paying teachers up to $1,500 a week for 4 days of work per week. We are also paying teachers for the 1-hour stream program we must do in the afternoon. We're paying $500 for that. We're paying $400 for that. We're paying TAs $500 for 4 days of work per week. So if you are interested, please go to our website, achievementschooldistrict.org, and sign up, apply. We are looking for teachers, and we are really excited to be able to do this for our students across the state. So we will have several locations in the city, and then again, our 2 schools that are in Nashville will have locations there as well. But we are providing summer camp or summer learning for grades K through 12. And we need people. So tell your friends if you guys are interested, achievementschooldistrict.org, and sign up.
Okay, question real quickly. Is this for all students or students that have been retained or?
So there's a twofold answer to that question. So this summer, our summer learning camps are for students who are identified as a priority student. Students who have needs, there are gaps that have been identified. We want these children in the program. However, schools can retain students for a number of different reasons, and they are able to, as far as we are doing in the Achievement School District, they're able to say, hey, parents, your child is retained. If your child attends this summer program and meets expectations, we can and we will promote. So that is up to, come on over, Ms. Smith. That is up to the school and that sort of thing. But next summer is where what Terry mentioned earlier, where it is going to be more of a requirement depending on how students perform on the state test. But this summer, it's not necessarily a requirement, but it can be used if a school has retained a child. They can say, attend the program and we will promote you. So that's why I said it was a twofold answer to that question.
I have a follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
Do they have to be students who are already in the ASD district? Can they be, for example, Shelby County School students?
So we at the Achievement School District, because we have a requirement, every district has a required number of students who must be registered. Once we hit that number, if we have additional students who'd love to attend, we would love to have you. So absolutely. Any student who is able to come and who needs to come, especially if one of our locations is close to a family and close to their home, we would never turn away a child who needs to attend a summer program.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I can speak briefly about what SES has been doing to address learning loss. Pretty much some of the same things. They, of course, are going to be having a summer program as well that will not be required, but it's recommended for many of our students. And they also have an additional summer school for those students who may possibly be retained to be promoted to the next grade. So there are 2 separate things. But throughout the year, they have been doing Saturday school. They've been doing over fall break, spring break, winter break. They've been having academies to catch up with the learning loss as well. So they've offered those opportunities for students to attend, and of course for teachers to make extra money.
And also, will you take a moment and speak about Summer, I'm sorry, I'm echoing, I don't know why, and speak about summer and lesson planning. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Had to unmute myself. Sure. So one of the things that we're doing to address learning loss over the summer is we're hiring a cadre of teachers and content leads to come in and do learning loss lesson plans for us. And we're trying to get several weeks of those done prior to the beginning of fall, just to give our teachers a starting point to help with that piece, and also just to take something else off of their plates. I heard Miss Mata Holly mentioned that earlier, in trying to, just assure teachers that we're all in this together. So giving them the opportunity to come in and do some work and push that forward, I think will be great for not only the kids, but for them, because that's going to be a huge part of what they have to do upon returning. So we want to just take some of that load and lift off of them and have that already done before they return.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I don't know if this has been addressed already, but I want to ask it anyway. What is the district's plan for increasing the literacy rate of our students, considering there has not been literacy growth over the past 10 years? And I can speak for Shelby County Schools as far as the there's no growth. Less than 25% of the students are reading at grade level and has not grown over the past 10 years. Okay, and I understand that Ms. Green is not here to address that, but I was wondering if the ASD district could address that, what you all are doing to increase the growth of the literacy rate.
So I will address it, starting first off by, just talking about the historical context of the ASD. Initially, the ASD, the district was just an authorizer of schools. So there was no real support coming from the district. Since I've been on in the last 3 years, we're moving toward more of a support type of structure, if you will. So we're really working with schools and working with their content leads, particularly in ELA, to push strong foundational literacy instruction. And one of the things that we're recommending, we will do this in the direct run schools, but we're recommending 180-minute literacy block for foundational skills, I think, which is 30 minutes more than the state recommends. And then another thing that we're doing is we believe in ongoing assessment, but we want to make sure that our schools can use the data effectively. We're data rich, but information poor. We get those numbers, we look at them, we even disaggregate them sometimes, but we don't really understand what the data is saying about instruction. So we want to make sure that we're using those ongoing assessments, and that translates into instructional pedagogy that makes a difference. So we want to make sure we focus on that. Another thing that we're doing is ensuring that all of our schools, even in a portfolio district, has high quality curriculum materials. And previously, as I said, we were just an authorizer. So many of our schools use different curriculum, but now we're moving toward, you have to have something from the state approved list that has been vetted and has proven success. And then we're also really putting a focus on collaboration among schools in the district, trying to get them to share best practices. And one of the things that we've done to kind of push that initiative is to have the content leads collaborate. So we pull them together like once a quarter and really have them to discuss what's happening in their buildings and to share best practices that way. So we have quite a few things going on. Also, we're expanding the team. We have a few new positions that we want to add. One of those being a K2 or reading specialist. I think that we forget sometimes that teaching kids to read is a science, and we really need people who are specialists in that area to come and support our teachers throughout the year, ongoing support. So I know the state is really doing a good job with providing training, but a lot of times that's a one-stop shop. We need it to be ongoing, because I promise teachers will encounter something that they don't know how to handle. And we need to make sure that when that happens, we're prepared for it. So did I leave anything out, Superintendent Settle?
I can keep going or I can stop, Erica. This was a great and a loaded question for us. So we are also doing everything we can, partnering with and working with the department to infuse as much support, as much instruction, as much professional learning for our teachers. And that's where it starts. Our teachers must understand what they're doing. And one of the things I ask my academic team all the time is that every year, every year I would say, how do we teach teachers how to teach children how to read? Because if the teachers don't understand what they should be doing to teach children how to read, they're not going to learn how to read. And also stressing for my team and for the district that every teacher is a reading teacher. Everybody teaches reading. So we want to ensure, and working with the department, we've applied for grants, we've been awarded the Literacy Partnership Grant. We are requiring participation and everything with Reading 360, because this is what we need to do to make our teachers better so that our students can learn at a higher level.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So we have now reached our final question. And with this final question, I want everyone to weigh in.
Okay.
Your opinion. So as I stated previously, beginning in 2022-23 school year, third grade students could possibly be retained if they are not proficient in ELA on the TCAP assessment. In your opinion, will holding back struggling third grade readers improve literacy? And also, what will be the impact of retaining students?
So I'll go first. Just based on my experience as a classroom teacher and as a literacy support advisor across the district, retention is not necessarily the answer if students do not perform well. There are many factors we have to consider regarding standardized tests. Number one, who are they standardized for? Not for our students, of course, we know this. Number two, even as young as second and third grade, students do experience test anxiety. They come to school, we don't know what they're coming to school with. Our children are living in a totally different type of environment here, many of them. And so we don't know what they're coming to school with, what burdens they have, just like we don't know as far as even adults, because we have been suffering in this pandemic and children have been affected by it as well. So they bring all of that with them. And to say that they're not able or capable of reading, that they're not proficient because of one test, it's not correct. So to retain them based on that is not enough. Now, if we look at the course of what they have done throughout the year, along with the test and other assessments that they've had, and we see that they're struggling, well, have we put the right supports in place to make sure that they're not going to continue to struggle? That's what we have to analyze and look at the data to see if the data supports retaining the student or not, because retention is not just the answer, particularly if you don't have the interventions in place to begin with, because they're just going to get the same thing again without having the scaffolding that they need to be successful.
I agree. And I think there's so many factors that go into why a student is retained. And even as we think about a child who may be retained for, not scoring proficient on the assessment, if we retain that child, the schools must do something different, because we have to identify what happened and why that child didn't learn how to read. If absenteeism was an issue and maybe this child has a learning disability, you have to essentially go through another year with the child coming to school every day and receiving RTI and that sort of thing before that child could even be tested, because you can't rule out that absenteeism or chronic absenteeism is the reason and not something else as far as a learning disability and that sort of thing. So Just retaining a child is not enough. We have to do and know a lot more to be able to shore up those areas where that child may be struggling, identify those areas of struggle, and then deal with those areas as well. I mean, just having him or her repeat and doing the same thing is not going to be very beneficial for them if we don't know why and what the reason was, why the child did not and was not able to learn at the level where he or she should be.
I wanted to just say, I think it may have come up earlier in our discussion, but we know that children that are retained are more likely to drop out of school. And so if we're increasing the number of students that we're retaining, in turn, we're also increasing the number of students that will drop out in the future. I also thought about, I just think that piece needs to be rethought. And I'm hoping that piece is rethought by the time that the policy goes into play, because I think Ms. Settles, you said it as well. We want to have additional strategies in place. If we're looking at their RTI, we're trying to see how they're progressing. We just don't want to say that we want to fail a child, because that child is never going to forget that in their life, and they're going to see that as a piece of rejection. And they may even think that in turn that it was something that was wrong with them as to why they couldn't move on. And when we think about a large urban school district, we know that we have higher numbers of students that are performing below grade level. So are we going to in turn retain every child in a large school district? I just think that piece can be rethought.
I have mixed feelings about it. I think that the bill is being implemented too soon. And I think it can be successful because I've done a little research and looked at different states like Texas and Florida who've implemented very similar legislation. And they have enough research to show that students who were retained actually outperformed students who weren't retained and failed their state assessment. What that does to a child mentally, though, I don't know. We haven't, I haven't seen any research on that. I know that our students will probably be disproportionately affected just because socioeconomic and academic achievement status is so closely correlated. But I do feel the advantages is that we're getting all kinds of support from the state that we wouldn't have gotten had this bill not passed, right? I think it also will give teachers, and I don't want to use the word accountability because that's a word that makes them pull back, right? But I think it puts a spotlight on what's happening in that classroom, right? That we wouldn't have had, and it will make people perk, like, okay, let me get on this, right? So I think it's a motivator. It can be a motivator. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure, I'm not sure how it will work. I think that one of the things I am concerned about is just the sole focus being on this test, without whole child supports. And that's another thing. I think we're putting, just this laser-like focus on instruction, which it should be. But like you all said earlier, there are so many other things and factors to consider, so many needs that need to be addressed with our children in particular. And then what do we do differently? If we're stretched, so far already, what do we do differently if a child is retained?
And I will say, as a parent who retains a child, I tried for many, many years with my son, my oldest son, my stepson. I tried for years to get him to be retained. He just wasn't ready to move on. But because he was making C's and, he had great conduct and he was such a well-mannered young man, he kept getting promoted. Even when I would talk to the teacher and talk to the principal, oh, no, we don't want to do that, because they were thinking about the social emotional side of it. And when he got to the 11th grade, he just was not doing what he needed to do. And we retained him in the 11th grade. And my push and my focus in that space, even with his guidance counselor, who was more concerned about, oh, well, he's going to be this age when he graduates or when he starts college. I told her college freshmen range from 12 years old to 90 years old. It doesn't matter how old he is when he goes to college, but he will be eligible and be ready to go to college. So there are some benefits to it, or could be some benefits to it. But I mean, I think what we all have said here tonight, all are factors that should be looked at and should be taken into account when we are thinking about retaining a child. And it should not be something that's done cavalierly or in a cavalier manner, but something where it is truly, and there's a plan once that child has been retained of what we are going to do to help him or her. So it takes us back to that literacy plan. We
have a viewer question real quickly. The viewer wants to know regarding whether or not the Tennessee Ready is an effective assessment tool.
And if not, why? And how could it be better?
Define effective.
What do you mean by effective for what?
That was a viewer question.
Yeah, I think what we've all said, basically, it's just that's what it is. It's a tool. It's just one measure. It's not the end all be all. And again, it is a standardized test, and we know that those tests are not written for our students. So I think it is effective for its purpose of providing funding, evaluating teachers, tying into the curriculum that's purchased. You know, it's the standardized test, the TN Ready, the assessment is big money. That's a big money business.
Marginalized students.
And it marginalizes students, absolutely. So, you know, money is a big factor in this game of public education. So we have to always look at who benefits from these standardized tests, and it is most definitely not our children.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, about ready to go. We have 2 minutes left. Any closing comments from anybody?
I just want to say thank you for having us on this panel tonight. Thank you for your work and what you're doing to become better and to earn that doctorate degree, and what you're doing in your respective spaces for children in the city of Memphis. So thank you. Shelby County, thank you.
Well, I want to thank everybody, all the panelists, and I will see you all on the other side. We all have our doctoral degrees. And good luck. And thanks again, Michael, for hosting or helping us with the technology. And thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.